Welcome to Amici, news and insights from the New York courts. I'm John Carr. We all have a story, and the purpose of Diversity Dialogues is to dig those stories out and explore the different backgrounds and experiences of people who work in the unified court system. Today we're going to visit with a man who is well known to very many of us in the court system, at least on the surface. I've probably known him for close to a decade, but until just a few days ago I had no idea that he was a Vietnamese refugee brought out of the country at the age of 4 by his single-parent mom, or that their journey halfway around the world began on a boat and included a period of waiting in the Philippine Islands where they slept on hammocks. In fact, I didn't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm referring to Martin Huynh, pronounced Hwin, as if it were Huynh, and he is a technical manager in the Division of Court Modernization. There's a common phrase in the unified court system when judges and non-judicial staff have a technical problem. It's call Martin. So I'm pleased to introduce you to that ever-helpful presence on the phone or Teams call. Martin, even though we've been colleagues for nearly half of your 23 years in the courts, I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. So let's start at the beginning if we could. So you were born in Vietnam in 1978, and when you were about 3, your whole life is uprooted. Tell me, if you would, why your mother wanted to get herself and you out of Vietnam.
Yeah, so we are from Saigon, which is the southern part of Vietnam, and right after the war, when the communists took over, just like all other people that aspire to come to the United States, we wanted a better life, opportunities, freedom, democracy, and justice, and especially since right after the war, life was very, very difficult, especially during the Reconstruction. There isn't a lot of job opportunities, and also during that time, we were, or at least my family and my grandmother, we were used to having democracy and democratic government, and freedom, the freedom things and things like that. So with the communists taking over South Vietnam, it's kind of difficult to kind of go back and have those freedoms taken away. So it was really important for her to especially after having me, to provide that opportunity and that life that like the United States can provide. So we made a difficult decision. I mean, my mom did. After the war, she sold her possessions, gathered as much savings and income as she can, and decided to try to escape.
What has your mother or other relatives told you about that time in Vietnam? What was it like for them?
It was definitely difficult. The war itself didn't affect them as much because we were in the city. A lot of the battles and the conflicts were more up north, so we weren't affected that much in Saigon. But as it was drawing to a close, the economic hardships and life, and just getting the basic necessities and food things got a little bit more difficult. So especially with jobs getting more scarce. I think my mom was originally, she was a bank teller. Eventually, she found a job working for the U.S. government. So when the U.S. left, she was out of a job. So we were just pretty much living on savings and just family support. So it was getting difficult at that time, and it was just that's one of the reasons why she decided to leave.
So how did you end up in the Philippines?
Yes. So at that time, I was born in '78. So she decided to leave when I was 3 years old. So that would be like around 1981. She actually tried to escape 3 times. This all under the cover of night. First time she was caught, and they basically said, you're lucky that you have a small child with you, or else we're just gonna put you in jail. So they let her go. The second time, she said that a soldier was kind enough just to kind of tell her don't go down this road or something like that. Go around here, or whatnot. So and then the third time was, I guess, the lucky charm. So all in the cover of night, we went to the beach, got on a fishing boat, and there was, I think she said there was like about 30 other passengers, escapees, just kind of all bunched in together. And they sailed off on a fishing boat at night. And we were on that boat for a day and a night until a German boat came and rescued us. So this German boat, I think the name of it was Cap Anamur. And if you Google it, you'll see like some stories and articles and pictures about it. But basically, it was this crazy German guy, and I say crazy as a positive thing, because everybody thought that it was just a crazy idea. But basically, he gathered a bunch of his friends and they decided to form like an organization to get donations and to charter a boat to sail around the sea, picking up refugees on boats. And this was a time during where there was no internet and GoFundMe and social media going viral or anything. It was just basically boots on the ground, getting donations to charter this boat. So yeah, we got picked up by this boat. They brought us to Palawan, Philippines, and so the German boat asked my mom, it's like, oh, if you wanted to go to Germany, we can go right away. With this boat, we'll take you. But if you wanted to go anywhere else, you would have to stay here. And she wanted to go at that time to the U.S. because she didn't really know Germany. She's more familiar with the U.S. So they dropped us off at Palawan, Philippines, and it's a refugee camp. Again, it's on Google if you want to like look it up. There's pictures and articles, but it was a Vietnamese refugee camp, and we stayed there for I think about a year.
Wow, interesting that you had to escape.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the way she thought about it and felt, because really, when she was before she had me, we had all these freedoms and democracy and justice and things like that. And when the communists came in, she saw what was going on in Russia and China and everything like that. So she didn't want to be under that that form of government, and especially for having a child also.
Now, you were awfully young. What memories do you have of the Philippines?
Not much. What I can kind of vaguely remember is just kind of pictures and scenes of. I know there were wooden huts, on stilts and dirt roads. I remember, there was hammocks and sleeping mats on the floor, but otherwise, I don't remember that much about it. It was really mainly, it was a refugee camp, so it was just a lot of other families, Vietnamese families, and there were some children, and we did that. I think the best we could to kind of recreate, the places, the country, and the homes that we left for a year or so while we were there.
I don't know how far the Philippines would be from where you left Vietnam, but any way you look at it, you've got another 10,000 miles to go to get where you want to get to. How did you make that journey?
So we were there for a year, and there were, of course, volunteer organizations there, and one of them was the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and actually they started after World War II to kind of relocate Holocaust refugees, and they continued that mission all the way, I guess, until I think even now they're active, but at that time they were helping the Vietnamese people, the refugees, relocate. So after a year, they sponsored it over to the U.S. And they asked my mom, where do you want to go in the U.S.? And my mom said, well, Hawaii's nice, and they're like, oh, Hawaii, it's more like a tourist area, the high cost of living, and there's is there any other places that you go there that might be more reasonable? And there's like, well, New York, she always heard about New York, so we got on a plane, 24-hour however plane ride, and we ended up in JFK and into New York City.
So what happens when you arrive? Where do you go? Where do you live? How do you communicate? How do you support yourselves?
So that organization, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, they helped us kind of settle down to find living space, like an apartment. They helped us with applying for social programs and getting us in contact with more local organizations to kind of help us settle and find jobs and education. So it was really them, and also the local Catholic church there. My family's Catholic, so that was one of the first things that my mom did was just go to the Catholic church and ask for if there's any assistance that they can give us. So it was really just a combination of just a lot of people, organizations, people that we've met through that organization and then through the church that really kind of helped us our initial first year there, basically providing an apartment, providing furniture, clothing, and then eventually my mom, they found her a part-time job to work at, to make some money, and then also to enroll in school. So yeah, it was a very integral part, like everybody involved there.
What was your immigrant status at the beginning?
We had green cards. So when we came to the U.S., they issued us green cards, and I think you need a green card, and I think after 5 years, you become eligible to go through the naturalization process, so to become a naturalized citizen. And that's the route that we took. Is after 5 years, my mom, she studied English and the U.S. history and civics courses to take the exams. She took the exams and passed, and then that was also trickled down to myself. Like she was a citizen, she became a naturalized citizen, and I became a naturalized citizen because of her.
I see. So you became a citizen because she was a citizen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So as a kid in grammar school, you're an immigrant. Do you feel like an outsider in any way?
Yes and no. No, because I grew up in Sunset, and this is for New York City or in general too. It was always a very diverse community, and when I lived in Sunset, there was a good Asian population, Italian, Irish, Spanish. So I really, as a kid, I don't, looking back, I don't think I've ever felt like as an outsider. But at that time, I did, because of some of my own insecurities of being like, hey, it's obvious, like I am kind of different than everyone else. And even though there were other Asians around in that neighborhood, there weren't a lot of Vietnamese people. Most of the Vietnamese population and people migrated to Southern California and Houston. In New York, we were just really spread out. But for the most part, no, I didn't feel too much as an outsider.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Who were your major role models as a kid?
Well, my mom, of course. I mean, just the sheer what she did to get here. She had me when she was a little older. I think she was in her early 40s when we came over here, and just like a small Vietnamese woman, single mother, coming with a small child, through the boat ride and surviving in the Philippines and coming all the way out here, and doing what she did to provide me with this opportunity that I had. Definitely with she's the toughest woman I've ever known, and just through hard work and grit. So definitely, yeah. So definitely my mom. And then while growing up, I had some good family friends that got me into fitness, and another relative that he was a very smart gentleman, and I think one thing that stuck out for me was that he gave me a hand-me-down VIC-20, which was like a Commodore 64, before Commodore 64. So at that time, everybody, or at least all my friends, had like Nintendo, and they had Commodore 64, and I couldn't afford that, so he gave me a VIC-20 and which is like the previous generation. So that VIC-20 actually played cassette tapes. So what you had to do just to play a simple game like Frogger is you had to put in the cassette tape and find where the counter starts for that game, press play on it, and wait for that counter to stop at a certain point, and then that's how they load the game. So I think that's what got me into technology down the road, is having to do that and be exposed to that.
What did your mother do for a living?
Well, when she got here, it was mostly, she cleaned offices. She did whatever that needed to be done. I think just to kind of provide and raise me the best she can. So, she cleaned offices. She was a cashier. She babysat. She worked at a library. Like basically everything under the sun, basically to raise me up. And I think that's where I get a lot of like the work ethic is from her, seeing her doing all that. So I started working at an early age to help her out because I see her, my first job when I was 12 years old, part time at the church, just answering the phones after school and on weekends, or answering the door. And at that time, I think I made like it was $3 an hour cash. And I remember like, oh, I worked the weekend and I saved up enough money to buy some Levi's jeans for that weekend. So I think I've been working ever since.
Where did you go to school?
I went to in Brooklyn. I went to a Catholic school for grammar school and high school also. And then after that, I went to Long Island University down in Brooklyn. They had a Brooklyn campus, and I was there for about a year or 2 years. And I wanted to get into I was always interested in science, so I wanted to do something like science related or maybe the health field. So I was juggling between something like physical therapy or physician assistant or pharmacy. So after the first year, I realized that Long Island University is a very expensive private institution. Even though I worked during the semester on campus, as a try to reduce the cost. I realized that I wasn't able to kind of keep this up, at least you know without having a very big loan when I graduated, and that's something like I didn't want to have was a big loan. So I decided to transfer over to Baruch College in the city, and this is where the computer technology came in. It's like I always was always interested in computers, so I majored in computer science at Baruch. And I graduated. Then after that, I received my master's down at Pace University, down also in the Manhattan campus.
What's your master's in?
Computer technology, also computer science.
So how'd you come to work for the court system?
I was working part time. This was during I think my senior year in college, and I was working part time at a small family law firm, and they dealt with tax certiorari, real estate taxes, and just helping out in the office, doing whatever they need to do, office things, and sometimes computer, since they were a small family law firm, that whatever they needed to do on the computer, help them out with that. So I had to. One of the things was I went down to actually 60 Center Street down in Manhattan here, and I was filing a notice of claim and an RJI for them. And I noticed a court posting for jobs on the wall, and that's started posting for a technical position in HR. And I applied to it, and then shortly after, I got an interview, and that's where I started my career was in HR, doing as a technical position. I spent about 3 years in HR, and then I transferred over to the Department of Technology under Sheng Guo. So since then, I mostly deal with video streaming, court audio recording. There's in the court, in family court and civil court, and things like that, where there's no court reporters. We have an audio court recording system that records the hearings. So that went over to evidence presentation. So now our group, we kind of developed our own group division here, court modernization. So that's my current group now is, and that's still under Sheng. So we do same thing, court evidence presentation, audio systems for the courtrooms, and also live streaming, which we worked in the past with. So I'm ready.
Do you think the court system has a diverse workforce?
Yes, definitely. I see it every day when I come to work, and just within you know, within OCA here, and when I go into the field and to courthouses, I definitely see examples of that. But I think also where we definitely shine and where the spotlight is the way I think the courts really believe and promote it, not just saying it, but really living it and promoting it. And I see that through like some of the great programs that have come up recently. Really very, very fascinating and interesting to see.
Well, that's the purpose of the diversity dialogue, so we can all learn more about people we think we know, including you. Why is diversity important, and why?
Yes, I mean 100%. I think if you're in a homogenous environment, I think, and then that's all you see is you don't get exposed to different cultures and different people. You kind of see new things or different things. You might see them as strange and weird, or it becomes more like a they, them, those people kind of thing. Where if you're in a diverse environment, it's more like an us thing instead of a they or them. One example I kind of came across and I just kind of stuck out when I was taking the train is I saw this this young girl on the train, and she was eating. She got out her like a bowl of rice, and she was eating seaweed, and she was an Asian, and I was like, wow, that's that's awesome. Like I think that I would never see that, growing up. When a kid doing that, there most of the time, like they would say, like, "Oh, what's that weird smell?" or "What's that weird thing?" or whatnot. And now, I see that on the train, and I see it when I go to, one of my favorite Vietnamese restaurants, and there's a line for it, and it's crowded.
My guess is that the crowd of people you see in the Vietnamese restaurant, I bet as many of them look like me as look like you. Right?
Yes.
That is our melting pot. So you were very young when you left Vietnam. Do you feel roots there?
Yeah, yes, I do. I think, and that's because more it's, I think because I was a first generation immigrant, even though I didn't grow up there and I left at a very, very young age. I feel like New York, the U.S., New York is definitely, where I belong, and it's my home. My mom really kind of tried to preserve the traditions and the culture and the language and the food when I was growing up, even though it was just, we didn't have a large community here. I still feel like a connection to to Vietnam. So I think it was always have a place in my heart for it. But I just the U.S. and New York is where my home is.
What sort of unique traditions or viewpoints did your mother share with you or instill in you?
Just hard work, study. I think more like the traditional, like, or you say like the tiger mom. It's one of the funny things is that when after I started working for the courts, and I started taking some annual leave, time off, and she would say to me, "Hey, don't take so much time off, and they're gonna say something, and or they're gonna you know they're gonna fire you or something like that for taking too much time off." And I'm like, "Mom, no, they give you this time, they want you to take this time, you practically have to take this time, it's not like." So in her mind, it was always like, just do hard work, do your best, be a good person. So, and even to this day, she's always, don't take too much time off, or else they're gonna say something.
I've done dozens of these diversity dialogue interviews, and including several with immigrants, and I pretty consistently immigrants from everywhere had a similar story, a similar work ethic, a similar appreciation.
And I always took it as, oh, it's just mom nagging and telling me to do this and telling me to do that. And then I recently came across a post that I read, which was the title is "Advice My Vietnamese Parents Gave Me," and I was reading it and I was like, this is like word for word what my mom at that time nags me about. And it kind of dawned upon me, it's like, this is not just my mom, this is like every Vietnamese parents. I guess this is like a generational thing that they pass down from one generation to generation. And what I thought was just my mom is just really just some sayings, things that I guess words of wisdom maybe, that she that every Vietnamese parents tell their kids. So I actually have some of them here. So here's one that làm biếng thì sao nài khổ, which means if you're lazy now, life will be hard later. The other one is làm gì cũng phải có lòng, meaning whatever you do it with heart. Another one is đi đâu cũng phải lễ phép. It means always be respectful wherever you go. And chịu cất chúc, sương sau, meaning suffer now, enjoy later. So at that time, I thought these were just my mom nagging, but these are like word for word, exactly, what she says, she tells me, growing up. So I thought that was a little interesting and fun.
I think it's very interesting. And yeah, I've done several dozen of these diversity dialogue interviews, and a whole lot of them with immigrants. And virtually all of them had a similar story. The lessons they learned from their parents, lessons that were brought down from their ancestors. And I like to think some of those reached the greater society and made us all stronger.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Now, I'm afraid most Americans, myself included, know little more about Vietnam than we thought. We fought a very long and very unpopular war there. What else would you like other Americans to know about Vietnam?
It's a very inexpensive place to go. So if you wanted to go there, it's perfect now. I went back there back in 2005 for the first time with a college friend of mine. We went there for 2 weeks, and it was just a beautiful country. Culture, the people, the landscape, it's all diverse. And I think it's modernized a lot, but I think it still has that charm. It should be definitely on one of your go-to list if you want to experience beautiful landscape and great food and the people.
I do, and I just added that to my list. Thank you so much for your insight and your openness and for all you do for all of us in the court system. You're always there, always helpful, and I know we all appreciate it.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it.